All right, I'm
We
starting our
are
timer.
recording, so whenever we're
All
ready.
right.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for our second episode, our second week of Off Book, the Actors Book Club podcast. My name is
Woo!
Juan Camero. Thank you also very much for joining us. Joining us again this week, we have Ali.
Hi.
Aniela,
Yo.
Gage,
You what's up?
and Alex.
I do not exist within time.
God, not this again.
I love a recurring, like a recurring bit. I love that. This week we are doing, correct me if I'm wrong, chapters 3 and 4. So yeah.
And what's the book? And what's the book? For any new people joining us.
I know who has the visual reference right there. We go.
Here it is.
Beautiful.
The Actor's Guide to Creating a Character.
By William Esper.
And Damon DeMarco.
Oh yeah, that other person. And this is the second book in the series, in case you just happen to randomly fall into this podcast. We're a bunch of professional actors of different stages in our career: voiceover, theater, film, TV, improv, all that stuff. And we're working on learning. And this right now is our 6th book that we have read, but it's the first one you're getting to come into this special space.
Yes.
And if you want to be caught up with us in a faster manner, you are in luck. The first book you can be spoiled because there is an audiobook version, so you can kind of go through that and then join us for the second book, which does not have an audiobook version. We are the audiobook version,
with a lot of commentary.
With a lot of commentary. Yeah,
all of it.
It's strangely emotional.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Gage, you want to do the quick rundown for anybody who wants to know what this book is, this chapter 3 and 4 are about, and then right afterwards we're going to get into the discussion.
That's right. If you're just here for the summary, here's how it goes. Okay, chapter 3 is titled Pain. That's not what it's titled, but that's what I've got. Bill introduces the idea of playing intense pain. The class starts listing symptoms of various ailments that you can have, like being limp or whatever. Then the class prepares over the week. Reg and Cheryl go up. Reg has his arm in a sling and Cheryl has a broken toe. They fail. Bill says that their impediments are not interesting. Uma and Dom start the work. Dom is sick. Uma rolled her ankle. She fails while Dom does very well. She fails because she's doing too much. Throughout the exercise, she is like trying to put weight on her foot so she can scream. It's very weird. Mimi and Tyrone go. Tyrone has thrown out his back. Mimi has arthritis, and notably, Mimi references knowing somebody who has arthritis and using that as inspiration. And then they start talking about playing pain without tension. And then this idea of proportion is introduced. How much is too little and how much is too much? Then we're on to chapter 4, where they're exploring the playing characters under the influence. So Bill talks about playing under the influence. He talks about why it's helpful. Then the class once again lists various ailments. They take the week to prepare. Ray and Melissa go. Ray is on heroin. Melissa is stoned. Melissa cannot get into the room because Ray is being very weird. And then Ray gets reamed out in front of the class for not properly preparing. While Melissa is told she's done okay. Donna and Trevor go. They do extremely well. Trevor is drunk. Donna is on coke. They just remark about how great it was. Then they introduce Imitation, which is the next chapter. And then in the I guess, epilogue of the chapter, Ray comes to Bill to apologize for under-preparing for his role. And Bill responds with a low level of empathy, as we've talked about previously. And now we're here.
And yet,
Poor Ray. I feel like he's going to be
Here we are.
Wow,
I love that.
that was
Great summary. That was a killer summary.
remarkable.
less than 5 minutes. Let's go.
I was doing my best.
Chugged water. I can feel you were
Fantastic job.
there.
I didn't breathe for most of that, dude. I didn't.
No, that was it was like watching
yourself
Krista
on the back.
perform.
Talk about a physical impediment.
Yeah. Good luck.
I love that. Pain, baby.
Pain.
Yo,
I-
okay. Yeah,
Yes.
Aniela?
No, go,
No,
Alex.
no,
You had a
please.
lot of pain.
Oh, but before you.
I have gone through a lot of pain. For those that don't know, I was in a motorcycle accident that required reconstructive surgery on my ankle and foot so that I could keep my foot. So I do understand pain and physical impediment because having to learn to walk again in adulthood is a very, very interesting thing. But when it comes to chapter 3, I thought the 3 points that Esper listed over a few paragraphs was really, really great and helpful. Those 3 points being to play 3 to 4 symptoms
Mhm.
of the physical pain, because trying to balance what a person may actually experience is not very helpful. Because like in the previous chapter about the shin splints, how like the pain will come and go, that's not entertaining for an audience to watch. They want to see the experience be at its max. um so like actuality has no realm in performance. It's about the heightened reality of the experience. The other point being staying relaxed, which we've talked about before. So that kind of feels like a contradiction because we tend to, I know that I've done this in movement classes where it's like, oh, be at this intensity level, and my body tenses up and I actually am not even meeting the expected goal because
Mhm.
like, oh right, I feel it in my body. I look so luxurious in my bathrobe. It's so cold. So I wanted to warm up. But um so keeping the symptoms to 3 or 4, playing the symptoms specifically and simultaneously, so it's not as simple as like, oh, just do 3 to 4. It's like you're playing all of them at the same time and you're playing each of them specifically. So the previous conversation about like know the why behind it, the how and the what. It's like all of that is layered at the same time. And then the last one is again staying relaxed.
Mhm.
Stupid important. I just love
That's
that
so
it's
hard.
broken down. But yeah, also
So
super super difficult.
super hard. Yeah, that was a really great summary. But then I also want to add in that he's saying that you need to pick the impediment. So you have 3 to 4 that are recognizable for that thing,
Yeah.
right? So yes, everyone might have a migraine a little bit different, but you want to pick the impediments that are the most recognizable
For the
for
general audience.
for the general audience, that they can watch that and go, oh yeah, they have the flu, versus being like so obscure with your pick because you're going to be interesting. No, but then the audience literally has no idea what you're doing.
I found myself, especially for a headache, like trying to recreate what I think or like what I've experienced. So, like, for me, it's like I'll do this a lot because I'm trying to apply pressure so that it alleviates the pressure inside. I don't know if is that something you guys do. I don't know how you experience headaches. I just know that
I
like
push.
you
Oh, I
push.
do the trying to do the same thing, but I push. It's
Temple.
so strange. Like that's such a strange part of this exercise is because this is like the first book that actively references what the audience is supposed to be seeing.
Mhm.
And like
Mm-hmm.
it's very weird. Allie, sorry, I
Um,
just wanted to add that.
no. I was also going to mention when they were talking about migraines, how interesting it was to have a person in the audience actually say, hey, I've had that. Let me tell you the symptoms that I experienced. And then as I was reading, I was thinking, well, he says keep yourself relaxed and not have tension, but how are you supposed to? And then, of course, they answer it right when I'm thinking about it. They're like, yes, you're not supposed to put tension on tension. if you feel those things, if you add on those symptoms, you will naturally start to take on that impediment. It'll
Mhm.
happen naturally without any like, oh, I'm feeling the headache. Like, you won't have to do that. It'll just
Mhm.
happen on its own. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting point.
That's awesome.
Great job,
Yeah.
Allie.
You're so great. Yay.
You're so brave.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
you're so brave.
Sucks.
Hey,
That's
2 points for you. A basket.
Yay. I'm adding him to the book.
No,
Gold star.
uh, I was just gonna say that that I've always felt like, I guess, like everybody says like to relax, how vital it is to relax. And for the longest time I felt like I don't know, like if I was too relaxed before a scene, maybe it wouldn't affect me as much. So I remember like when I actively applied it, because before I would do the complete opposite of relaxing before a scene. I would be borderline shadow boxing backstage. And and so that definitely gave it, depending on the scene, it can work, because if you're depending on the scene that you're walking into, it can kind of work. But even when I did apply it, and even in an intense scene, I fully relaxed before. I guess my concern was being in a foggy state and not fully being focused on my lines. It can be a little bit different for live theater, or you got to apply it however the situation calls for it. But I guess that was my concern, that if I was too loosey goosey, too relaxed, that my mind was going to be foggy and I wouldn't have my line. And really, when you go in, as long as you have your first, at least for me, if I have my first line, I'm good for the rest of the play. If I forget the first line, oh fuck, like that's when.
Mhm.
So that was my concern. But once I actually applied it, I wasn't foggy. I was actually more in a state of focus than I was before, and it gave me more of an ability to to flow with the scene and make choices that felt natural to the character, as opposed to focusing on the lines.
Yeah.
So
It just
yeah,
becomes muscle memory at that point.
yeah, for sure.
Just
That-
just to piggyback on that super fast is like, again, I have an audition today at 1 o'clock, and when the breakdown starts with "sorry for the turnaround," that they sent you that like yesterday, and they're like, you got 12 hours. So my point again, and I know Danielle talks about
Starting an
this all the
audition
time.
request with sorry is a
Yeah.
choice.
Right. The first word is guys, I'm so sorry for what I'm about to do. But it's like, what if you don't have time to build that muscle memory? Yeah.
I think that is upon us as actors to be practicing those things on our own, no
Mhm.
matter what, anyway. Because
Good point.
even in the physical impediment, Esper took a moment to say, like, I think every actor should explore blindness and figure out how many steps it takes for you to get uh, to the to your bedroom door,
Mhm.
where everything is in accordance to your living space. Because a blind person, like after Quid chose his impediment of blindness, he's like, you would know everything in your home. You would have the exact steps. You would have a system in place that you would be able to go by. So you know the steps it takes to go down the street to then make a turn to go towards the subway. You know how many steps are on the path to get down to the subway. Blah 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 blah. So like, you're relying on all of your other senses. So it is
Mhm.
on us as individuals to be like, I can't wait for the audition to tell me it's time to start practicing different impediments. What we can do is go into our memory of moments of times where we have been in physical pain, where we have had to overcome some sort of challenge, and calmly um take inventory of what those things felt like and have them ready, so that when it's time to do an audition, you brush it off, you rehearse it a little bit, and then you can have it be second nature again. That, at
Mhm.
least, easier said than done. I'm not going to
Of
say
course.
like, oh, just do that. It's like, no, you got to put in the time, which it's so rare to have that time unless you specifically make it. There's so many distractions that we have in the modern day that are demanding our attention at all times. We literally have them, like Ali so graciously showed, they're in our pockets and they just want to be in our faces all the time. Those little black mirrors that we thank you, Vanna White. but but yeah, so like that's what I think the solution is. It's like we do have to take the responsibility within ourselves. This is the unpaid part of acting. It's the we are putting in this much effort for the opportunity. If it comes up, it may never come up, and that has to be okay. If you are going to get resentment, if you're going to get resentful over the fact that you practiced this thing and you don't even get the chance to use it, the practice is the chance to use it. Congratulations, you got your reward. It's not
Yeah.
about getting the role. It's not about all of that is bonus because, like Gage, we talked about last episode, there is so much out of our control. The only thing we can control is how we decide to behave towards it. I have been one of the biggest dummies when it comes to that. And I'm in a phase right now where I'm attempting to soften so that I can better manage those disappointments, because I know my brain super creative and it will form story after story on why I should, I deserve, I earned. None of that matters. The only thing that I can do is go, I can prepare myself as best I can. This is what I give. And if it's accepted, bonus. If not, I get another try. And that disappointment is I think really discouraging for people that are hanging on to the entitlement that I know I had. And it makes it that much more difficult because it's already a difficult profession to pursue, and only made worse by our own unwillingness to have the humility like we talked about last time.
Yeah.
Daniela?
Yes. Great point. I think that practicing outside of this, which kind of leads me into the chapter 4, is that there are stock impediments when it comes to drugs or alcohol that are used a lot. And so it's kind of taking the time to really learn what that looks like and feels like for yourself. Of alcohol, weed, things like that come up all the time in plays and auditions. So if we can have that beforehand. But I want to go back to what Ali was saying of breaking those down. Chapter like 2 or what? It was chapter 2. We talked about the pretending. What is pretending? And so that idea of the headache, back to this headache of, okay, you get the tension. Okay, it's push, some of you push on it. And he does a really great job of breaking down the different aspects of the 3 to 4 characteristics of this impediment, which is sensitivity to light, sensitivity to sound, and feeling like your brain is going to explode out of your head. And if you focus on those 3 very specifically, which I was like, okay, well, how would I do that? In rehearsal with myself, then would be, let me practice just sensitivity to light. Okay, then it would be practicing just sensitivity to sound. And that's painful. Okay, then it would be at like trying sensitivity just to, like my head's about to explode. And then it would start to layer those on. Like, imagine like, what is the rehearsal process for this, right? And then layering those on top of it while keeping the body loose. Right. And as those of us who are in this movement class, I have learned that I might think that I am showing tension in all these aspects of my body, but I'm not. I do not have the ability so far to control every part of my body yet.
Right, to isolate
Yeah, to be able to isolate and to be able to know what I actually am feeling in each of these. But I think that part of like, because even when we were just talking about headaches, I was like pretending like, oh, I have a headache. What does this feel like? And I was like, oh no, I'm back to pretending. And it's being specific. And I think it's going to take me a lot to break that habit of pretending and knowing what the specificity of the specificity is.
Big t-shirt.
For
Can we get a counter of how many times she messes that up per episode?
I love it.
Yeah, we'll add a graphic.
It's a theme. The specificity of each of the ailments in each of the like bigger impediments, and then as well that comes into alcohol. Okay, sensitivity to light again, slurred speech, but because you're wibbling as you're walking, but that's because you're trying to walk straight. And so again, I think I'm imagining it's practicing each of these things and then starting to add them on. And you can only do that if you actually put the fucking work in and get off our phones.
Quick question. Do any of you have like stuff that you do for specifically drunk? Like, do you guys have any like specific tricks that you do to like show that? I'm just curious.
I think I find myself whenever I read the chapters, the first thing I do is always think, well, what would I do? Well, what would I do right now? Like I try to do it like in my bedroom reading, and I'm like, okay, well, what would I do? So the first thing that always comes up to me, and again, there's two things. This goes into my point. I had my hand up for in the first place was to Alex's point. I actually think Bill reinforces both of your points because they make it a point in the book every time anybody lists any kind of ailment for Bill to already know every single thing about it because he's already done this work.
Yes.
Right. So he could just put it on because he's already done it. And in an audition setting, it would be the same thing. So for me with drunk, I the first thing I always think about is like tunnel vision.
I just got hired as a substitute teacher.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yay. Your boys got income now.
Yeah. Income.
Sustaining art projects through daily income. Anyway, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I was just so excited and wanted to share with you guys.
No, you're fine. It's like I always imagine tunnel vision. This is the first thing. Like that was the first when I was thinking about it and doing it in my room. It's like, only being able to process one thing at a time. And then I always find myself being like, but am I really doing it though? And I just don't know if that's my head or not. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like he talks about that slurring your speech and being like, don't do it on purpose. It's just kind of happening. Am I doing it on purpose though? I don't know.
I used to practice hiccuping. Like hiccuping as an interruption of talking. And I knew I got it because one night I was leaving a club with a group of friends and I was the DD. And I was talking and then I just was like, no, I'm totally fine. And my friend was like, all right, you can't drive. And I was like, I literally faked it. Thank you so much.
And
But
that's
it's
actually a
stuff
point
like
he
that,
makes.
getting away with it in real situations. Like that was something I was just doing it for the bit and just having fun. But I was like, oh, okay, I got it. And
Right.
so I played a character for a sketch show where I was like the drunk uncle of the audience, and I did that throughout the show. And we were live, we were streaming it live, and somebody in the streaming audience was like, "Is Alex actually drunk doing this show?" And I was like, "That's the best compliment I could ever get for being a drunk guy," because like. Yeah, like it was convincing enough. Like the trick is to usually it's not about doing it in the quiet parts, it's doing it mid sentence that then
Right.
like triggers something in our lizard brain of like that person drunk.
Right. And Bill actually says that that's the best test. It's like the best test is do it in front of other people and see if they can tell.
Yeah.
Allie?
Well, I was going to answer the question of Alex of like what do you do when you play drunk? Luckily, the only time I ever had to play drunk in a play was shortly after I took my first sip of alcohol in college. So that was great. And I
And
did
you
have a
were
couple-
wasted.
That was her best performance, and now she's a functioning alcoholic.
You went full method. Wow.
I am.
Just
No, but it was
one
actually
sip.
days later. But it was good that I had like, I don't know, like had just done it. I didn't know I was gonna play drunk in that scene. I knew we were going to be playing a drinking game, but the
Mhm.
director last minute was like, Ellie, can you play drunk? And I went, I think so. And so I did it. And one of the actresses looked at me and she went, wow, Ellie, you're really good at that. And I said, well, thank you.
Okay.
He
That
was a
voice
functioning
is,
alcoholic.
I don't know if you've seen the show Over the Garden Wall.
Yes.
That was Jason Funderburger.
Oh my god, I love Jason.
Oh my,
Funderburger. I was
Also
thinking
sounds a
more
bit like
Lola.
Lola from Big
Lola
Mouth.
from Big Mouth.
Also Lola.
Lola's right here.
You're
Right
so
here.
good at that.
I'm ready to make out.
Yeah,
Oh
we
my
can
God,
like
Nina.
rub our pelvises together, like.
Hire us, everybody.
You're how good we are at
I'm
this.
the lady.
Oh my god. Okay, on that note of you actually getting a little trying alcohol before being drunk, Bill Esper does mention this when it comes to the pain part. And I think it also applies to the drugs and alcohol part, because we do come across those actors. We're like, I need to understand this, so I'm gonna go do heroin.
Okay. But the description of heroin made
Sounds
me
amazing.
want to try heroin.
Oh my God.
And
you know,
I had
the
to
description of
specifically
alcohol.
stop myself and be like, I don't want that. I don't want that. I want
Right.
that experience, but I don't want it. Like,
Dude,
I was
Right.
And then what about Melissa when they're listing the symptoms of alcohol, like having a hangover, and they're like sensitivity to light. Oh yeah, I get really irritable, and Melissa's like bleeding from the ears.
and Esper was like, exactly. I was like, no, we're being real poetic
I
right
thought
here.
I skipped a page. I was like, wait a minute.
Like, what are you drinking?
Yeah,
Bleeding from the
yeah.
ears when the noise when it gets too loud. I'm like,
I feel like
where are you?
that's the writer having fun. I feel like there's moments where, like in one of the previous books, where it was like Kenny, like obviously like, oh, that guy's a predator, and it's just like, I think that's the writer having like fun for himself.
Didn't Kenny get kicked out of the group?
Yes,
Kenny
yes.
did get
Spoiler.
kicked out because, well, yeah.
It wasn't Kenny, it was Trevor, and he's like,
Trevor
let
was
your,
the
let
creep.
your mind wander to the first crime you could commit, and he's like, I mean, I guess if I slept
I
with
could
an
knock up a
underage girl-
teenager. I could knock up a
Yeah.
teenager and be scared I go to jail.
And we're like, ew, what is wrong
Like,
with Trevor?
never let Trevor's mind wander ever again.
No.
The dude's gonna commit a crime.
Yeah. So just so you all know, the crime stuff is from book 1. So you're definitely going to want to go and read that for all of the exciting adventures. Yeah, but that process, yeah, no, his description of heroin sounded amazing, of being kissed on the forehead by God. We were like, oh, that sounds real nice. But again, it's having to figure out, I think that I really appreciated that part. Not the heroin part, but the part in the beginning of chapter 3 about pain. And the fact that it's like, well, you don't want us to smash our heads into the side of the wall. And I think there is a group of acting technique or actors of what I have heard, right? Of that, oh, you've got to be so method that you need to like, and I do get like, okay, being out of breath before a scene. So I've heard some people like running around the block, but what if you have 30 takes and your ass now has to stop production? You have to run around the block every time. Or do you learn how to breathe heavy before your scene starts? Like how do we learn to do these things in a sustainable, healthy, safe way as an actor versus being like, I'm going to go try meth. I'm gonna
Mhm.
go have sex with my scene partner because we're supposed to be like in a relationship. It's like, so you're gonna burn down your entire marriage because you're like, well,
Mhm.
For the craft.
For the
for the
craft.
Right, yeah.
craft, I need to
No,
do
I
this.
think that
Uh-huh.
like in anything else, there is a healthy way and an unhealthy way of doing things, and it depends on the level of, in my opinion, selfishness on the person. Like you have people that will refuse to go by any other name than their character name for however many months. They act and behave as if they're that person, and we know as performers that we never leave. We are
Mhm.
never fully somebody else. So it's just I think it's a masturbatory thing for people that just want to like get a special attention because they so willing to do what others can't. They are so
Mhm.
special. And it's just like, cool. You also have painful shits. You're also having to deal with the same challenges every other person does on this planet, all because you get to behave like an asshole for every waking moment of your life. That doesn't actually make you special.
Right. Right. I agree. I think that it reminds me of the natural opening of the Herald where you're just like and everyone's like, what the are you doing, bro? Like it reminds me of
Yeah.
That's an improv thing for anybody who's listening to
right.
this going having no idea what the Herald is or a
Sure.
natural opening. That's an improv long form thing. Okay.
I think that, but what's strange, Alex, is I actually think we're taught to admire that as the outsider. I think we're taught when we hear about an actor who's like, I'm so committed. You know what I did? I cut off a bit of my tongue so that I could play somebody who had a bit of his tongue cut off.
It is
And you're
and it
listening
isn't.
to it. But I think it depends who you ask.
That's
Because
Shia LaBeouf
it's like,
cutting his face
no,
for.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Or you hear about like Heath Ledger, and the thing is, it's like you really know the story. You know that the Joker role didn't really kill him. He was an addict previously, whatever. But the
Sure.
point is when you hear those stories, the juxtaposition to it often is that's how far they were willing to go.
Yeah, but
Are you?
every coin has the other side. You have Jared Leto who decided that being the Joker meant that he was going to send what looked like used condoms and dead rats to co-cast members, and
Mhm.
everyone
didn't
goes
know.
like, that's a weird. Oh yeah. They allegedly he did all this outlandish stuff, and then they ended up cutting him out of most of the film because he was just so miserable to be around. And I think that if you are willing to use your imagination and go as far as you can, that's fine. When it begins to harm others, that's when when it delves into the unhealthy. Like
Mhm.
locking yourself in a room like Heath Ledger did and just writing in notebooks and playing with his imagination and going into depths of human psyche, nothing wrong with that.
I agree.
You need to a way to get out,
Mhm.
and he ended up slipping into old habits and then unfortunately passing away. That was an unfortunate byproduct of something that could have been perfectly fine and recovered from. There's
Mhm.
also an extenuating circumstance over that. So it does require a certain level of knowing yourself and knowing what your boundaries need to be. Addiction is a whole other level. It's a
Right,
whole
I
other level.
completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. I think it's and the word that comes to mind when you say that to me is separation. You
Mhm.
need to separate the like because again, you're talking all this stuff about Jared Leto, and Jared Leto is famously terrible at playing the Joker. So it's like I just think it's interesting that you don't really hear about that. Those stories aren't so in your face, but they're
Mhm.
important. A couple things, like again going back to the book, is it feels like a lot of the things that I hear about like playing drunk or playing high or whatever actually come from this book, right? Like a real alcoholic the way you know is because they're trying to hide it, right?
Mm.
And all that stuff is actually, as I'm realizing, it's from this. It's from this, or it's from
I
something that
think
came
it's
before it. But
sure like they put it to page, but like everybody knows the shame of wanting to hide something about
yeah,
yourself that's
sure.
dark. So it's taking the reality, the doing that
hmm
that we as people do, and then imagining it for the character. That
Right.
so like yeah, sure, this book might be one of the first to say that, and I don't even think that's true. I think
It's
that's
probably not.
existed for so long, but nobody really goes into the detail of it, at least in a lot of the spaces that I've been in. And I'm not trying to
Mm.
say that my anecdotal experience is the be all end all of education. Obviously not the case, but yeah, Ali.
Well, I was just gonna say on the topic of actors and doing like method, right? I don't know if like I can call some of these things method. But I do know that like we were talking about running and like is it worth it for us to like run around the block when we have 30 takes? But then I know that there are some actors like I was just looking up names, Tom Hiddleston from Loki, where he before each take of the scene, if he had to be out of breath, would do 10 push-ups, which like great for him that he can do 10 push-ups that many times in between however many takes. But I think I look at that as like, oh yeah, that's an ethical way of doing things. As
Yep.
opposed to somebody like, and now they were able to eventually get out of this, I do know this, but Daniel Kaluuya in Nope, the horror movie,
Oh,
he was very like the character was very quiet and subdued and antisocial, and he said that he practiced that like for 6 months and would go out in public and avoid making eye contact with people and actually he said became this person, and it took him a long time to then get out of that, and he was eventually able to do it, but to hear him talk about it was scary to think that somebody could go that far. And then even Austin Butler, who did Elvis, who put on this voice of Elvis, has said openly in interviews, yeah, I never got my old voice back. I don't even remember what I used to sound like before I did that movie.
Hugh
And then,
Laurie for
yeah,
Dr. House, he would do other projects after House and start limping when they said action. Just to
yeah,
add an example to you, like because we talked about it last episode too. Like House is like, yeah, that physical impediment stays in his mind now. He's just
hmm
ready to do it.
but
Right.
like
DiCaprio apparently couldn't stop saying the N word after Django Unchained and needed therapy.
never went away. But with, I just wanted to really quickly finish with Austin Butler. At the same time, or around the same time, Jacob Elordi also did the role of Elvis in Priscilla. And Priscilla Presley went on and said, listen, I watched, Austin Butler. He was great. I thought he was great in the movie. I also listened to Jacob Elordi during production of Priscilla, and not knowing who I was listening to, I thought I was listening to an old recording of Elvis Presley. That's how accurate his voice was. And Jacob Elordi didn't do all this like method of like he didn't speak to his family for months and he became Elvis. He didn't do any of that, and yet in some weird way he beat the other guy because he sounded more like Elvis. It's just, I think it's very interesting to see like successes, but also pitfalls of actors that take on this type of method.
Right.
Yeah.
And seeing that even these really, really famous people are not immune to making mistakes, even if their mistakes are not as grand as others. Aniela?
So I was doing this one class, and the teacher was talking about actually creating a altar for each character that you're doing, so that you can close it down when you're finished. And I think that's really helpful as an idea of like having. If you're watching this, you'll see that everyone's now giving me the 5 because that's them on the last one.
For our audio listeners, we're giving Aniela the light.
But so as a technique though, there are techniques to hold the space emotionally, spiritually, whatever your thing is, of having a character altar that you can bring with you to set, that you can fold up, that is like, and it's a couple things that are tangible that you might stick in your pocket, but that you can put away when you're done. And I also, that same class, the teacher was talking about therapy, which is actually a write-off as an actor after, if specifically after a role, to help you get back out of it. You could get therapy to help you get out of it and write that off.
Well, they mentioned that in the book with Marilyn Monroe, and they mentioned another actor.
Oh, that she always plays the character. Yeah,
It's always
yeah.
Norma.
Yeah,
There's, like-
Norma Jean wasn't Marilyn.
No, she told there was a story that Burt Reynolds used to tell where he and Norma Jean and another actor went out on the town one time, and she was Norma Jean. She had her little like hood up, and they were at some like diner, and she apparently like looked at the two of them near the end of their lunch, and she goes, "Hey boys, you want to see Marilyn?" And she like took off the hood. She had the big blonde bombshell hair, and she started, because she would walk a certain way as Norma Jean, but when she was Marilyn Monroe, she'd have the whole hip bump. He said we got mobbed. People recognized her so instantly. She went from being this unknown person just walking the streets of New York to Marilyn Monroe.
Wow.
Juan?
Touching on the like Jared Leto and the sending castmates presents or whatever.
That's a crazy description for what he did.
Fantastic person, you're gonna love it.
I think there's also like there's another line that is not like obviously as like blatantly insulting as that, but I'm curious to know what you guys make of it, which I still think in its own way is like, I guess, insulting or making light of something serious. But like actors going to an AA meeting, for example, to get into that headspace when they're not an alcoholic, or someone going, I've heard of actors going to hospice care, which I think is like, dude, like get a fucking grip. But that's just me. Go ahead.
I can speak to that immediately because I actually just booked a role in it as an AA member in a feature film.
Yay!
So
Nice.
I looked up the protocol because I want to be, because here's the thing, I want to honor as authentically as possible the reality of this character. And so I looked up, I was like, is an actor allowed to go to an AA meeting for an understanding? And yes, you can, but it has to be an open meeting. And you go to learn and observe. You do not participate. When they come around, you just say you're there to learn and observe. You follow the protocols of being anonymous. You don't tell anybody else about it, but you can go to open meetings because open meetings are made for people to learn about AA, for things like that. And so I am actually planning on going to an AA meeting so that I can have a better understanding. And they have them online. So I might do an online one just so I'm not as disruptive in the process of me attending it. But yes. So for something like that, if you're doing research respectfully, because the truth is, I want to honor to the best of my ability the truth of this character, and that I take almost as a spiritual idea of like I am helping like give life for other people who are in this situation. I want to do that truthfully.
Yeah. And I think that serves to the going after a higher purpose. I just think it's worth mentioning, because I know we're about to wrap up, that we're talking about all the dangerous ways that this can be done. But the book, I think, is doing it in a very healthy way. They're doing it through doors and activities. I think we're just talking about a broader discussion about things we've heard, but it's in the juxtaposition of the book actually teaching you, I think, a very healthy way of approaching it and doing it through the Meisner technique and doors and activities.
Because he does list off the ways that, because Ray obviously messed up because all he did was watch Train Spotting and was like, that's enough. And then like, shame on you for thinking that you can watch one movie and know what heroin is. Like it's a different beast than just what I think Train Spotting unknowingly, but like ends up glorifying it because you're watching these characters and everything. It's the same kind of like glorification of gore and stuff like that, where it is supposed to be horrific, but like after a certain point it is entertainment. So I think the explanation of like do the research into what the experience is. Don't actually experience the thing. That's not safe.
Right. Right. He
Anyway.
says artists suffer for their art, but let's not go overboard.
Exactly.
That's a quote. And so I do think it's worth mentioning before we pass it off again to Juan to end us, because we're at time here. Read these books, because there are things we can't get to. Like, I know I have things that we didn't get to. If you really want the full experience, read the chapters.
Yeah.
Juan.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this week in Off Book, the Actors Book Club podcast for chapter 3 and 4. Please make sure to join us next week for chapters 5 and 6. Make sure to hit us with a like, a subscribe, keep up to date with all of our new episodes every week. And thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week. Here is a visual representation of the book that we are currently reading and a digital version